Hi guys, today we are talking about the thyroid. I get so many questions about the thyroid. My doctor is not testing the thyroid. What's an optimal thyroid function? My thyroid used to be bad, but now it's regulated because I'm on medication. I'm going to teach you a lot of stuff about the thyroid today. And the goal is not to overwhelm you, but to empower you and to help you understand maybe why you have been struggling to get pregnant and stay pregnant. And the thyroid is really important for postpartum, really important for postpartum. So maybe we've had a bad experience and our body was able to get through it the one time, and now you're struggling with secondary infertility. Really important to have our cylinders firing on all levels when we are trying to get pregnant, not just for the first time, but multiple times, and when we are older. And I'm going to talk about that concept a little bit, because if you're new and you're just joining, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'd love for you to throw it in the comments or throw it in the discussion why you're here. What is some of the stuff that you're hoping to learn? I plan my content for about 5 weeks at a time, but I always get feedback from you guys to help me understand what is it that you want to learn about and where are the missing pieces for you in order to help you feel more empowered, more in control, and more confident going through your fertility journey. But if you're new here, like I said, please introduce yourself. I'd love to know where you are. What we are going through, though, is, let me just see if I can find the thing that I am trying to share with you here. Where is it? Here we go. We are going through this little bad boy, the 5 lives that you should run before considering IVF. Because the reason that I made this freebie is because I found that women have been pushed into doing IVF without getting any explanation. And what's happening with the fertility clinics now is they're really overburdened. So it's taking a long time to get into the clinics, to see the doctors, to make the appointments, to get in, to get some sort of lab testing, then to review those testing. And at the end of all of that waiting, you get very little answers. And if you are focused on more natural pregnancy, you want to see if you can achieve a pregnancy naturally, or even if you just want to understand why you're not getting pregnant. Because again, pregnancy is a natural process. So when it's not happening, we need to really understand what's going on, what's preventing the female body from being able to do that. And of course, the sperm plays a big role in that. And you know, 50% of the DNA is coming from the sperm, but 50% of the DNA is coming from the female, and the female has to carry the baby. So the female has to have a lot more things in line in order to make sure that that pregnancy stays through to the end. And then we have the labor, and then we have to sustain the baby for at least a year, whether you end up breastfeeding or not. It's still a lot of work, and the baby is going to be primarily attached to the mom. So the reason that I made this handout is I want you, if you're tired of all this waiting and you want to take things, matters into your own hands, and you want to really understand what your body is trying to tell you, why it's not getting pregnant, why it's not staying pregnant, this handout will really cover a lot of that. And we've done that in the last 5 weeks, 4 weeks. We talked about why it's important to get your gut tested, why it's important to get a full hormone panel, a micronutrient analysis. And today we're going to talk about a thyroid panel, because the thyroid, unfortunately, is not standard practice for your doctors to test, which is crazy because it should be, but it's not. And this is why I need, this is why I'm spreading this information. I'm putting this information in here so you guys know what to do, what to ask for, and you have answers. Because the worst thing that we can feel is helpless and powerless when it comes to our own fertility journey. And so we want to take that power back. We want to take that control back. So whether you decide to go with IVF or not, because that might seem like the only option for you at that time, I'm going to go over why it's important for you to test your thyroid. Now, stay here with me because I'd like to introduce this concept. I think most women now understand that birth control does not balance your hormones. And if you're still like, but maybe it's balancing my hormones, it's preventing me from having my period and preventing the pregnancy, and I couldn't imagine getting pregnant in my 20s. And so that's what I'm just going to do. Please understand that if you have any issues, if you're going on birth control for birth control reasons, that's going to be very different in terms of what it's doing to your body. If you're going on birth control for other reasons like acne, heavy periods, crampy periods, irregular periods, whatever the issue may be. So if you're using birth control to help you manage those symptoms, just know that it's not managing those symptoms, right? It's patching it up. And if you're going on birth control for birth control reasons, we have to start to educate ourselves and look at what are some other ways that we can prevent a pregnancy from happening. Is it educating and understanding that we can only actually get pregnant 5 to 6 days out of the cycle, out of the month, and understanding when our fertile days are and when they're not, and that there isn't actually any kind of birth control that's really good for you, whether it's the copper IUD, the Mirena, the Kylina, the oral contraceptives, there isn't a birth control that's good for your system. Any kind of birth control is going to be your body having to work around it, whether it's a device. Now, if there's a device that's inside the uterus, I used to think that that was a better option not that long ago, but the truth is that's going to cause more inflammation. That's going to cause your body, there's a device in your uterus that's not supposed to be there. And there's usually a hormonal imbalance that comes with that. I don't want to go off on birth control. That's just kind of where my head is at because I getting off some calls. But the point is, we understand that birth control doesn't balance our hormones out. It controls them, it gives us synthetic hormones, but it doesn't fix an issue that's going on within our body. Now, when we get prescribed thyroid medication, for whatever reason, women will just say, I'm on thyroid medication, so it's regulated. Your thyroid is managed with medication, but the issue of why the thyroid is not working well is still very much there. And so I really need you guys to start understanding that anytime that we use a medication for something, we're using it to control, to manage, and sometimes we need to do that. Don't get me wrong, we need to do that. But if there is no long-term plan in mind, and we're just left with this, take this medication forever, I'll see you later, that doesn't give you, it doesn't give you any answers, and it doesn't give you any tools. There's nothing that you can do. And now you feel attached to this medication, and whether it's your anxiety medication, whether it's your thyroid medication, whether it's your birth control, whatever it is, if we have an attachment because we're worried and we don't trust our body, this is what I really want to empower you, is that we need to learn how to trust our body. We need to recreate a different relationship, repair the relationship that we have with our system, and trust that our body is always talking to us and letting us know that something is off. So it might be letting us know by having heavy periods, painful periods. It might be brain fog. It might be acne. And it might be the inability to get pregnant, because really at the bottom of that is, are we ovulating? And it's generally like in however many % cases, I can't tell you, but a lot of the times when we can get pregnant, there is an ovulation issue, or there's an ovulation issue, whether it's robust, whether it's too early, it's hormones are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's a lot of inflammation, immune system function. So the goal is to get down to the bottom so you can have clarity. And like I said, the reason that I made this handout is because I want you to have this information. So if you want, if you don't have it yet and you want to get your hands on it, go ahead and comment labs in whether you're watching this live or you're watching it on recording, just comment labs and I'll make sure to get it into your hands. So without further ado, let's talk about thyroid and why it's so freaking important. And I'm actually just going to draw on here if I can, because I think that that's just going to make it easier, but I'll make sure to use maybe the white. So basically, thyroid, it plays a really important role. Like, why do we want to test the thyroid? It's important in development of the embryo. Plays a huge role, and particularly neurodevelopment, so nervous system development. And up until about 10 weeks of gestation, the baby is completely dependent on the placenta to transfer T4, thyroid hormone of the mother. Okay, so this is completely dependent 10 weeks to 12 weeks. This is why when typically women have miscarriages, that 10, 11, 12-week mark, we can, I don't want to say we can for sure say that it's thyroid. The way that we're going to test that is, the way that you're going to know that is to test it. But miscarriage and in a later half of the cycle is really highly dependent on in the later half of the pregnancy versus 5 to 6 weeks, 8, 9 weeks, 10, 11, 12 weeks, we're looking at the thyroid. Now, when we're going to look at the testing, and I'm going to stay here for a little bit of some of the other things that the thyroid is responsible for, but you can have normal TSH levels and have symptoms of hypothyroidism. You can have really high TSH levels and have no symptoms. And that's commonly known as subclinical hypothyroidism because you don't have any clinical symptoms, but you have your TSH is out of whack. There is a really big, there's a study that's showing a correlation between PCOS and hypothyroidism. So this is really important. Thyroidism aggravates insulin resistance, which then, can feed further into PCOS, depending on what kind of PCOS you have. Again, we're going to talk about those conditions a little bit later as I plan out my content for the future. But what I want you guys to understand is that the thyroid is, I'm going to show you how we screen it, which is this, and it is not standard practice. Everything, the docs are always testing for TSH, but if I draw this for you, so the brain talks to the thyroid gland, and then the thyroid gland produces free T3 and free T4. The free T3 and free T4 are actual hormones of the thyroid. T4 is inactive form of the thyroid, and T3 is the active form. We produce mainly T4, and it has to be converted into T3. This conversion takes place in the liver. TSH is the measurement of the brain, thyroid stimulating hormone, the brain talking to the thyroid. So if the thyroid is really high, that means your brain is producing a lot of thyroid stimulating hormone to get your thyroid to work. So the brain is trying to tell your thyroid, come on, produce the hormone. And it's all a negative feedback loop. So once you produce enough thyroid, free T3 and free T4, there's a negative feedback loop that tells the brain, hey, you don't need to message anymore. And so the same is true when TSH is really low. So we're looking into more hyperthyroidism. This is the really simple version of it. But as you can see, if we just test TSH, you are getting a very, very small look at what is going on in the system. Very small look. Now, when we test free T3 and free T4 and TSH, we're starting to get a little bit of a better look. Are we actually producing it? And is our conversion working? Now, if we're not testing the liver, if we don't know what's going on in the liver, and sure, you can test liver enzymes, but there's actually signs and symptoms that we can look at that are telling us that the liver is not working the way as good as it should. As good as it should. Okay, because your doctor is always going to give you, conventional medicine is going to give you a really wide range, but optimal range is much thinner, much smaller. And so if you're over here, some people might feel no symptoms and they might feel great and they might be able to get pregnant. And it doesn't mean that that pregnancy is complications free. It doesn't mean that that baby is healthy. It doesn't mean any of those things. So if you're struggling to get pregnant, you're getting frustrated, and bitter and jealous because you're seeing other women get pregnant who don't take care of themselves, please know that a pregnancy does not guarantee anything. Just because you're seeing somebody get pregnant, like I said, it doesn't mean that that pregnancy is good. That doesn't mean that that baby is healthy. That doesn't mean that that baby grows to be a healthy kid. And it doesn't mean that the postpartum period wasn't difficult. So we really do have to stay in our own lane and focus on what's important for us. But the point is, some people can be really out of range and not have symptoms, and some people can have just be out slightly out of range and have symptoms. The goal is to figure out what's working for you and what's not working for you. And this is why we want to do testing, because the testing is going to provide us the data that you need in order to give you an action plan forward. So we're not just overhauling our entire life because our doctor or whoever said, oh, you should try to eat more vegetables, you should stop exercising so much. First of all, I'm going to lose it if people stop recommending women exercise during pregnancy or during preconception care. You need to exercise. How you exercise is going to change. Absolutely. You can be doing high intensity fasting workouts, beating your body up all the time. And you can be working up 5 or 7 days a week, but you need to work out. And so I see all these recommendations that are made out of thin air. And it's like, we need to stop that. We can't make recommendations out of thin air. Let's make recommendations based on what's working for you and not working for you. And the way that we do that is by sharing data. Honestly, though, like if you've experienced that, and if your doctor or whoever told you to stop exercising, just stop it. That makes me nuts. That's not a good advice. Don't do that. That's not good advice. And if it doesn't feel like good advice, don't listen to it because it's not good. Oh no, all my notes are done. All right, that's all right. I thought it was going to save it, but we're going to continue because it was really full anyways. So the point with the brain, the thyroid, and the liver is that we have to look at more than one thing. And then we have to look at the immune system function and to check and screen for any autoimmunity, which is your thyroglobulin, right? Antithyroglobulin and thyroid antibodies. So, and the reverse T3 is really good measurements to measure the stress. I'm not going to go into that too much because, again, a lot of the times it's understanding thyroid never works alone. The thyroid, nothing in the body is a one-man show. So there is a triad between the thyroid, the adrenal glands that produce your cortisol, and then your ovaries. And so we want to make sure they're constantly working. And it's not like, oh, if the thyroid is malfunctioning, everything else is good. The thyroid is never just on its own. And there's usually a component of stress. And there's usually a component with ovulation, estrogen, because again, the thyroid is our metabolism hormone. It literally turns up our metabolism or turns it down. And all of these things are going to be impacted by your liver health. And your liver health is not just measured through enzymes, but also your symptoms. Do you have headaches? Do you have acne? Do you have red, itchy eyes? Do you anger easily? Do you have constipation? All of these things can be measured and told if our body is working well or not, right? So some of it is lab tests and some of it is just being really thorough in your health assessment. But if we have an autoimmune, then you're going to have some of these antibodies. And what I want you to know about antibodies is when they are present, it's 3 times the increased risk of having a miscarriage. A lot of women won't even get these tested before they're starting to try. So 3 times the risk for something that we can test and something that we can correct naturally, right? And some of those things are going to come down to, do you have leaky gut? Do you have a gluten sensitivity? A dairy sensitivity? Is there stress? Is there a nutrient deficiency? Is there a liver? So everybody is going to express their symptoms differently, and there isn't going to be a one solution. And again, I want you guys to just shift your thinking and shift your perspective. Like, what do I do, doc? What do I do, doc? The thing that you do is you get a proper health assessment. That's what you do. You stop grasping at straws, you stop looking at Google, and you stop trying to figure out what you should do. And if your conventional medical doctor is not going to have this conversation with you, and the more that we continue to rely on our conventional medical doctor, the more frustrated you're going to feel. Trust me, I get it. I've been in the system and I fight against the system all the time. But if you're looking for a more proper health assessment, if you're looking to really figure out the root cause of your problems, your conventional medical doctor is just not trained in that. And so I find doing the lab testing and investing into yourself and figuring out what is causing it, what is causing my issues, and balancing those out with the foods that you need to eat, the supplements that you need to take, the lifestyle changes that you need to make to help you and your body thrive. So then you can not just get pregnant, but sustain that pregnancy, have a beautiful, healthy pregnancy, and give birth to a baby. So immune system, really important. It's also, I forgot to mention, so 3 times increase for miscarriage. I want to see if I'm still drying. I'm not. Here we go. And 2 times increase preterm birth. So really easy screening, you guys, that we can do to help us prevent this. And thyroid in general, how do we know if there is a thyroid? Not even how do we know if the thyroid is malfunctioning, but just to help us understand it a little bit more. From the maternal side, here are some things that you're going to notice. So anemia is a big one. And this is going viral right now on my Instagram, endometriosis. I will cover endometriosis and PCOS and things in a little bit more detail. But in general, it's a disease is never just one thing. So it's not just the thyroid. There's immune system involvement. There's the gut involvement, hormone involvement. And the goal is to figure out what is in your environment that's turning those things on and causing your genes to turn on. But infertility obviously is a big one. And then, you have things like PCOS, you have things like postpartum hemorrhage. That's possible. And preeclampsia. These are all things that are associated and backed up by research of not having a good thyroid function. Again, the goal is not to scare you. The goal is to empower you so you have a much better understanding of what is it that's, important. And for the fetus, like we said, the first 10 weeks, and it's really 10 to 12 weeks, the fetus depends on your thyroid gland. So if your thyroid is, barely functioning, and now you have to sustain a whole other human, and this is your nervous system development, right? It puts what we call neonatal distress. The baby's stressed out. It's not getting enough thyroid. It's really, really important. And then, of course, obviously, if it's not getting enough thyroid, then they can have some thyroid pathology as well. But let's talk about what the optimal number is here in terms of TSH. So the ranges keep increasing. I'm not sure if you're surprised by this, but the ranges of the thyroid keep increasing, and that's not good. And I'll tell you why that's not good, because basically now everybody's starting to go outside of the window in terms of what is normal for thyroid function. And so they're just increasing that range. So when you're in the range and you've been told that you're normal, I can't tell you how many. So the range in Calgary, Alberta in Canada was 0.5 or 0.1 to 4. And in the last year, it went to, 0.1 to 6. So if you have a thyroid of like 6, you're probably likely not feeling that great. That's just general health. Now, when we're talking about pregnancy, we need optimal function. And so what is optimal function here? I keep forgetting that if I cover it, it's not going to come back. But optimal function for thyroid is going to be 1 to 2, and you don't want it to be greater than 2.5. Not greater than 2.5. That's really important. That's how I know your thyroid is working really well. And then in terms of free T3, ideally, you're going to be in the 4 to 5 mark. And the range is, anywhere between 3 to 7. And for T4, the range can be, like 10 to 25. And as you can see, that's a big range. But ideally, you're going to be around 19. So that's how I know you're producing enough thyroid. You have enough nutrients to produce the thyroid gland that you need. And then hopefully these numbers are good as well, which is going to tell me that you're converting it. And then if there's any antibodies, usually it means there's an immune system involvement. So we have to do a little bit more digging, a little bit more cleaning up. But this is just your general, because for antibodies, you should have maybe 20 or less. And when we get into 80s, 100s, and I've seen people in the thousands, we just know that the thyroid is really struggling in the immune system. We typically can test the immune system function and see that there is an autoimmune component present. And of course, having an immune system that's that's dysregulated is going to pose its own issues when it comes to pregnancy, because the first reaction of the egg and the sperm is that of the immune system. So we need to make sure that we as females have a really strong immune system that is well regulated and is also flexible. So it's not rigid and it's not out of control. Okay, I know that was a lot. So if you guys have questions, I would love it for you to post it in the comments again, whether you're watching it live or later on the replay. What I would love for you to throw in the comments as well was, what was one of the biggest aha moments through this that you watched that was like, oh my God, I had no idea. It gives me so much information, so much feedback, and it allows me to continue to teach you and help you become more empowered through the journey. So please, please, please share that information. If you want a copy of the labs document, just go ahead and comment labs and I will get that to you. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Much love. And I'll see you next week where we're going to talk about environmental toxins.